Picture the Wyoming prairie at twilight battered by a sudden blizzard. 71-year-old ranch owner Beatrice Whitlow collapses in the snow. Gasping for breath, 45-year-old Garrett Doyle, desperate to save both her and their newly merged ranch operation, battles the storm to carry her to safety. It's a heart-stopping moment that changes everything, proving that even a marriage born of necessity can spark profound devotion. Will Beatrice pull through? Will their unconventional union triumph over doubt and gossip? If you're eager to find out how this surprising bond unfolds, complete with close calls, family drama, and a future that redefines what love looks like, then stay tuned for the entire story. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist in this tale of courage and commitment. And while you're here, be sure to subscribe to our channel to keep supporting more captivating stories just like this one. Garrett Doyle stood in the small wood-paneled office of Spruce Bend Ranch, staring down at a foreclosure notice spread across the battered oak desk once used by his father, Andrew Doyle. The early March wind rattled the windows, carrying with it the threat of another dry season. 50 head of cattle remained on this Wyoming land, a grim remnant of the once thriving herd passed through generations of Doyles since the late 1800s. Garrett was only 45, but the lines on his face and the heaviness in his eyes told of a man aging rapidly under financial strain. The bank had given him 30 days to secure the overdue loan or relinquish Spruce Bend, forever ending over a century of Doyle family legacy. He pressed a calloused hand to the letter, as if by touch alone he could will the numbers to shift in his favor. Andrew Doyle had taught him to respect the land and honor each promise made upon it. But drought, plummeting cattle prices, and a grasshopper infestation had converged into a perfect storm that no lesson in ranch ethics could reverse. A photograph on the wall showed a younger Garrett standing beside his father at a bustling cattle drive. They had been smiling in the sun boots, caked in mud, never imagining that Spruce Bend might one day come to ruin. From outside came the sound of a pickup rattling to a stop. Garrett moved to the window just in time to see his ranch hand, Clint Ramirez, jumping out of an old truck with a large envelope in hand. Moments later, Clint entered the office, letting in a swirl of cold air and dust. "Morning, Mr. Doyle," he said, tipping his hat. "Post office. Just got this figured. You'd want it right away." Garrett thanked him quietly, taking the envelope. A bold crest in the corner read Shady Creek Ranch, accompanied by the elegant name Beatrice Whitlow, known throughout Clearwater County as the formidable cattle Baroness. Beatrice was 71 years old and proprietor of the most extensive ranch holdings in the region. Rumor had it she ran tens of thousands of acres with an iron will, outlasted 2 cattle crises, and lost her husband Richard almost 20 years ago. Garrett had never interacted with her beyond the occasional polite nod at local auctions. He couldn't fathom why she might send him anything. Clint coughed softly. "I heard about the bank." His voice turned apologetic. "My wife, Miriam, and I were talking. We can stretch out the hay we have left. Maybe do some bartering with my cousin, who's got a line on extra feed." Garrett forced a smile. "I appreciate the offer, Clint. I'll let you know. For now, see if we can hold on to the north pasture. That fencing's our best bet for calving, if the weather holds." When he was alone again, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of fine paper embossed with a crest of braided horseshoes. The handwriting was smooth and deliberate. "Mr. Doyle, I request your presence at Shady Creek Ranch tomorrow afternoon, precisely at 1:00 p.m. There is a matter of mutual benefit we must discuss. Please come prepared to talk business." Beatrice Whitlow. Garrett read the note twice. Perhaps Beatrice wanted to buy Spruce Bend before the bank swooped in. Pride churned in his gut, but the letter's mention of mutual benefit piqued his curiosity. Staring once more at the foreclosure notice, he finally set it aside. Sometimes he recalled his father saying a rancher must swallow pride or starve on it. A single meeting was better than losing everything without a fight. The next day, Garrett navigated his aging pickup along the winding, well-maintained drive that led to the Shady Creek main house. In contrast to Spruce Bend's modest homestead, Shady Creek's 2-story log structure was impressive. An expansive veranda wrapped around the ground floor. Tall windows reflected the bright sky, and an American flag fluttered from a sturdy pole out front. Ornamental gardens, even in late winter, showed professional landscaping that thrived despite Wyoming's harsh climate. Garrett felt an odd mixture of awe and resentment as he climbed out of the truck. In another life might Spruce Bend have looked so prosperous. A middle-aged woman named Dolores greeted him at the door, introducing herself as Shady Creek's longtime house manager. She led him through a foyer lined with vintage photographs. Garrett spotted an image of Beatrice Whitlow in her youth astride a powerful roan, her posture straight and confident. Next to it hung a photo of Richard Whitlow in formal ranch attire, silver-haired and ruggedly handsome. Garrett couldn't help but note how well-preserved everything seemed, in contrast to his own ranch where even the pictures were faded. He was ushered into a sunlit study filled with more photographs, shelves of legal ledgers, and a pair of large windows overlooking rolling pastures dotted with cattle. Beatrice Whitlow stood behind a walnut desk. She wore pressed jeans, polished boots, and a fitted denim jacket that belied her 71 years. Her silver-white hair was coiled neatly at the nape of her neck, and her pale blue eyes held a calm, penetrating gaze. "Mr. Doyle," she said, stepping forward with an outstretched hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "I appreciate your promptness. Punctuality is a virtue I value." He removed his hat, feeling suddenly underdressed despite his cleanest shirt and recently brushed boots. "Thank you for inviting me, Miss Whitlow. I'm curious about this matter of mutual benefit." Part of him wanted to skip the niceties and ask outright if she aimed to buy Spruce Bend, but he sensed that bulldozing into conversation would do him no favors with a woman of her stature. Dolores set out a platter of sandwiches and fresh coffee on a side table, then discreetly withdrew. Beatrice gestured for Garrett to sit. The leather armchair was soft molding to his frame in a way that made him feel uncomfortably aware of his own dusty clothes. She settled behind her desk and folded her hands. "I'm well aware of your predicament," she began. "Without preamble, Spruce Bend faces foreclosure if you can't settle with the bank within 30 days. Meanwhile, Shady Creek is at a point where I need to ensure its longevity beyond my lifetime. I've been running this ranch solo for 20 years since Richard passed, and I have no direct heirs to take over when I can't manage it myself." Garrett felt heat creep into his face. So that was it. She wanted Spruce Bend in some deal that extended Shady Creek's empire. "Are you offering to buy me out? Because if so, we're wasting each other's time." Ms. Whitlow, her lips curved into a tight smile. "Not exactly. I have a proposition for you, a marriage, specifically a contractual marriage between you and me, combining both ranches, securing your finances, and ensuring Shady Creek is left in capable hands once I'm gone. We'd operate as partners, both sharing in profits and decision-making." He stared, momentarily robbed of speech. Marry a woman older than his own mother, a woman he barely knew, albeit a local legend. But before he could gather his wits to protest, Beatrice spoke again, unruffled by his shock. "Think about it as a merger, Garrett. My name has weight, your name has grit, and together we might just preserve the ranching traditions we both hold dear." In the hours following that meeting, Garrett could hardly process the enormity of Beatrice's offer. The concept of marrying anyone after losing his wife Genevieve nearly a decade prior had never crossed his mind. Marrying a woman more than 20 years his senior, and doing so for pragmatic reasons, seemed unimaginable. Yet driving home from Shady Creek, he kept recalling Beatrice's unwavering gaze, the matter-of-fact way she'd laid out terms that would rescue Spruce Bend from ruin and give Shady Creek a new generation of management. She had been clear: take a few days to think about it, but remember the bank's countdown. By the time he reached Spruce Bend, the winter sun was low on the horizon. That evening, his daughter Ava Doyle arrived from the veterinary college in Montana, her face set with worry. She had learned about the impending foreclosure through an old friend in town who caught wind of the bank's final notice. Slamming the front door behind her, she marched straight into the kitchen where Garrett sat nursing a cup of coffee. "Dad, is it true?" she demanded, dropping her duffel bag. "We only have a month left to save the ranch." He nodded, exhaustion lacing his voice. "I wanted to spare you the stress while you were in school, but there's no point hiding it now." Ava's eyes were bright with anger and concern. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I could have helped. My scholarship has a stipend. Maybe we could." Garrett shook his head. "It's not enough to make a dent, but there might be another option." He hesitated before divulging Beatrice's plan, unsure how his fiercely independent daughter would react. In the end, he told her everything. The formal meeting, the talk of merging ranches, and the proposal of marriage. Ava listened, arms folded, her expression shifting from shock to outright incredulity. "So this Beatrice Whitlow, who's 71, wants you to marry her?" Ava questioned. "That's not even a shotgun wedding. It's a business transaction." "Dad, doesn't it feel wrong?" he exhaled, recalling the desperate measures he'd considered in the past few years, selling off half the herd, mortgaging equipment, draining his savings. "Ava, you know how important Spruce Bend is to our family. If I don't do something radical, we lose everything your grandfather and his father built." Before Ava could argue further, the door creaked open and Clint stepped in, hat in hand. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, looking uneasy. Just wanted to say goodnight, but I overheard Mrs. Whitlow's proposition. Are you really considering it? Garrett pressed his palm against the table, feeling the worn grooves under his fingertips. I don't know, Clint, but I can't dismiss it outright. If it saves Spruce Bend, maybe it's worth my pride. A heavy silence followed. Ava's anger softened to worry. She quietly gathered dishes from the table as Clint offered to check the barn, before turning in for the night. Garrett stared at the fading embers in the fireplace, recalling how, as a boy, he'd sat in that same kitchen with his father, planning each season with hope. Now that same kitchen felt like a war room. Marrying a 71-year-old cattle baroness. Eventually, Ava returned, resting a hand on his shoulder. You always told me ranch life is about survival, but is this the only way I can't judge if it's right or wrong? I'm just scared you'll regret it or that she'll break your heart. Her voice wavered on those last words. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. There's a risk in any bargain, he murmured, and I'm not sure how to feel about all this either. But at least let me see if there's something more behind Beatrice's offer. 3 sleepless nights later, Garrett found himself once again in Beatrice Whitlow's study, only this time his hat was in his hands for more reasons than courtesy. He had come armed with a folder of legal notes from a local lawyer, a man who offered to draft a prenuptial agreement and property arrangement that would safeguard both parties. If he was going to entertain such an unorthodox plan, he wanted to ensure he, and more importantly, Spruce Bend wouldn't be swallowed whole by Shady Creek's vast empire. Beatrice sat calmly across from him, wearing a deep green blouse and dark jeans that contrasted with her silver hair. Her posture was regal, yet not unapproachable. On the desk lay her own set of legal papers, and between them sat 2 cups of coffee and a plate of oatmeal cookies that smelled homemade. Garrett suspected Dolores had baked them specifically to ease the tension. So she said, folding her hands, "Have you considered my proposition?" Thoroughly, Garrett cleared his throat. "I have. My lawyer prepared these documents." He passed them over, feeling a surge of awkwardness. "I'm sure you did the same." With a faint smile, Beatrice slid her own folder forward. "Indeed. I took the liberty of incorporating clauses that protect your parental rights regarding your daughter Ava and ensure you maintain operational control over Spruce Bend. In exchange, you'll have partial oversight of Shady Creek as well. That is, if we decide this marriage continues beyond an initial 1-year trial period." The business-like tone lulled Garrett into a strange sense of familiarity, like finalizing the purchase of a new tractor or negotiating a feed contract. He flipped through the pages she provided, noticing they were meticulous, covering scenarios such as either party's illness, the distribution of ranch profits, and even property lines. Everything pointed to an arrangement that was indeed about mutual benefit, not simple acquisition. A question that had haunted him resurfaced. Why me? He voiced it quietly, not lifting his eyes from the pages. You could have your pick of partners or employees to manage Shady Creek. Why tie yourself legally and personally to me? Beatrice leaned back, a pensive cast to her features. Because you represent what ranching was and what it should be. Honest, hardworking, with genuine respect for the land. I've watched you these past few years. You never cut corners, never treated your workers like numbers. Even in hardship, you held on to your ethics. She paused. Shady Creek is my life's work. I need someone who loves this life enough to maintain it long after I'm gone. Money won't buy that devotion, but a shared vow might. The words carried unexpected gravity. Garrett closed the folder. Heart pounding, this arrangement went beyond self-preservation. It touched on shared ideals and possibly deeper emotions. Both of them were wary to name. I'll need to talk to Ava, he said. This affects her future, too. Beatrice nodded, understanding, softening her gaze. Of course, speak to her. Speak to your lawyer again. Just don't delay too long. The bank's timeline is unyielding. She stood, extending a hand that he took reflexively. With a gentle squeeze, she added, For what it's worth, Garrett, if you choose to accept, I promise this won't be some idle whim on my part. I'm serious about forging a partnership. He felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Relief that she respected his autonomy, fear over what his neighbors would say, and a flicker of curiosity about the woman behind the stern business face. He tipped his hat. Thank you, Ms. Whitlow, he said softly. I appreciate your honesty. Word of the proposed business marriage leaked before Garrett could share it with more than a handful of people. By the following Friday, local chatter had ignited like wildfire in a dry field. At the feed store, folks whispered behind stacks of grain bags. At the diner, the waitress refilled his coffee cup twice, while fishing for details. Even the small-town newspaper printed a speculative piece about the rumored alliance between Spruce Bend and Shady Creek. The fact that Beatrice Whitlow was 71 and Garrett was 45 only stoked the gossip. In the midst of this storm, Ava confronted him again. "Dad, this has gone county-wide," she exclaimed, setting down her cup of herbal tea in frustration. "And people are acting like you're gold digging or that Ms. Whitlow's trying to buy a husband. Doesn't any of this bother you?" "Of course it does," Garrett replied, pinching the bridge of his nose. He had read a snide article questioning whether Shady Creek aimed to monopolize local water rights. "But letting the ranch go under would bother me more. If I can figure out a way to keep Spruce Bend running and perhaps do some good in this county, I'm willing to weather idle talk." Ava chewed her lip, her earlier anger morphing into compassion. "I know, but sometimes I worry about your heart. You've been lonely since Mom died. I don't want you stumbling into something that might hurt you more." He smiled faintly. "Your concern means the world to me. But I've learned there are no guarantees in life, whether in love or business." He poured a fresh cup of coffee. "How about you? You came back from college mid-semester. Don't you have exams soon?" She shrugged. "I can take them remotely if needed. Besides, I can't focus when our home is on the brink. The ranch is part of me." "Dad." Before he could respond, the phone rang. Glancing at the caller ID, he recognized the number for Marshall Dawson, owner of the ranch north of Shady Creek, and a well-known opportunist. Garrett's gut tightened. "Hello, Doyle." Marshall's voice was smooth, almost friendly. "I read that little piece in the paper. Heard you might be wedding yourself into Shady Creek territory. Word of advice, watch your back. Whitlow's not the only one who can maneuver in this county." The call ended before Garrett could ask for clarification. He set the receiver down, unsettled. Marshall Dawson's father had tried for years to acquire pieces of Shady Creek, always outmaneuvered by the Whitlows' thorough legal checks. If Marshall smelled a chance to undermine or block the alliance, he'd do it without hesitation. Ava's gaze flicked between her father and the phone trouble, possibly Dawson's stirring the pot. "Something about water rights or grazing claims, maybe?" He exhaled. "All the more reason to finalize an arrangement with Miss Whitlow quickly, if I'm going that route." By dusk, with chores done, father and daughter returned to the house where a surprise visitor waited. Beatrice Whitlow, herself stepping out of a gleaming old-model pickup. Dolores accompanied her, carrying a folder of documents and a casserole dish, wrapped in a floral towel. "Hope you don't mind," Beatrice said, meeting Garrett's eye with a calm, poised look. "I thought we might share a meal and talk. The rumors won't stop swirling on their own. We can at least figure out how to handle them together." The four of them sat around the Doyle kitchen table, plates of steaming chicken casserole between them. Ava observed Beatrice cautiously at first. Dolores helped by sharing stories of Shady Creek's community-building events. Slowly, the tension in the room thawed. Midway through the meal, Ava asked about the ranch's educational programs. Beatrice lit up discussing how Shady Creek offered free horse training, demos for local youth. Garrett caught himself watching the exchange with a sense of surreal calm. Perhaps he thought the town was right about one thing. This alliance was unusual, but as Beatrice spoke with clear-eyed determination about saving tradition, and as Ava nodded with reluctant respect, he wondered if unusual might be exactly what they all needed. Against a backdrop of lengthening spring days, rumors turned to grudging acceptance. The Shady Creek Spruce Bend marriage, while still raising eyebrows, no longer dominated every conversation. Some folks had real problems, livestock diseases, patchy grazing, and a delayed rainy season, and the uproar over a potential May-December union receded into typical small-town gossip. Garrett, meanwhile, focused on practicalities, meeting with the bank to restructure the loan if the arrangement proceeded, reviewing Shady Creek's business model, and double-checking a new calving protocol that Ava introduced after learning about cutting-edge veterinary methods at school. One chilly dawn, Garrett rose early to ride along Spruce Bend's western boundary. He needed solitude to gather his thoughts. The soft glow over the horizon, they lit up the barbed wire fence, each steel barb shining like a warning about the costs of half measures. The dryness in the air reminded him that a single failed season could devastate them both. Even if his union with Beatrice saved Spruce Bend from immediate foreclosure, the long-term viability of merging ranches hinged on more than just shared branding. Midway along his ride, he dismounted to check a creek crossing. That's when he saw a large black sedan parked near the water and a figure crouched with a camera. He approached warily, discovering none other than a local tabloid writer. The reporter tried to ask him about the romantic details of the upcoming marriage. Garrett had no appetite for fueling sensational angles. With curt politeness, he escorted the intruder off his land, frustration pounding in his veins. Was this how it would be from now on, random strangers poking around his personal life? Later that morning, while helping Clint with the routine vaccination for a group of heifers, Garrett caught himself snapping at his ranch hand over a minor error. Clint simply sighed and said, "Boss, maybe you should take a break. You've got a lot weighing on you, feeling guilty." Garrett apologized. The two men spoke candidly, reminding Garrett how the ranch's crew had always been more like family than employees. By midday, he climbed into his truck and headed to Shady Creek. If they were truly going to be one operation, he needed to share such aggravations with Beatrice, not keep them bottled up. The drive gave him time to reflect on how bizarre it was that he'd come to value her perspective so quickly. He remembered that day in her study the moment she said, "I'm not offering you pity. I'm proposing a partnership." He recalled the care in her eyes, the unwavering self-assurance in her voice. He found Beatrice saddling a horse in Shady Creek's main stable, her silver hair pulled back and a light jacket draped over her tall frame. She gave him a small smile. "I was about to ride the north pasture. Care to join me?" They rode through gentle hills dotted with sagebrush, the open sky so vast it made Garrett's burdens momentarily smaller. Bit by bit, he confided the morning's run-in with the reporter, the ongoing tension about merging ranch finances, and his fear that people might never see this arrangement as anything but a scandal. Beatrice listened, guiding her horse with calm expertise, occasionally nodding or asking a clarifying question. When he finally finished talking, she reined in near a quiet bend in the creek. "Garrett," she said softly, turning toward him, "this is about more than preserving Shady Creek or Spruce Bend. We're showing this county that tradition can evolve. Let them whisper and pry. The land doesn't care about their gossip. It cares about who nurtures it. As long as you and I stand firm on why we're doing this, we'll weather any storm." He studied her, feeling a wave of gratitude for this woman he once only knew as the cattle Baroness. Maybe, just maybe, this marriage would be more than a mere arrangement. April arrived with unpredictable weather, warm afternoons hinting at spring, then sudden cold snaps to remind everyone that winter never truly left the Wyoming plains without a fight. Garrett busied himself retagging cattle, a job that had to be done before the herds were fully integrated under the new arrangement. He and Beatrice had set a date to finalize the marriage contract, April 15th. It was unromantic, sandwiched between ranch chores and tax deadlines, but it made sense from a business standpoint. Ava remained torn. On one hand, she recognized that merging ranches opened opportunities for her budding veterinary career. Shady Creek boasted the facilities and funds Spruce Bend could never afford on its own. On the other, she watched her father grow closer to Beatrice in ways that transcended mere contractual obligations. It wasn't jealousy exactly, but a persistent fear that the arrangement could end in heartbreak for everyone. Nevertheless, she helped as best she could, reviewing the newly established grazing charts that combined data from both ranches. Meanwhile, trouble reared its head in the form of Marshall Dawson, who filed a formal complaint about water rights, claiming that Shady Creek's takeover of Spruce Bend threatened other local ranchers. Beatrice responded by unearthing decades-old documents showing how the original boundaries had been surveyed, signed by her late husband Richard and by Marshall's own father. The legal standoff could drag on for weeks, but neither Beatrice nor Garrett seemed rattled by it. Their alliance ironically had strengthened in the face of this external pressure. One brisk morning as the frost retreated, a sudden call came through. Beatrice was sick. Dolores phoned to say she had found her coughing severely in the early hours. Garrett wasted no time. He hopped into his truck and sped toward Shady Creek, hard hammering like never before. Sure, the woman was older, but she'd always projected an image of ironclad health. When he arrived, he found her leaning against the kitchen counter, breath ragged and face ashen. Dolores tried to offer sips of water while Clint, who had been delivering feed, hovered anxiously. Garrett guided Beatrice to a chair. "Why didn't you see a doctor?" "Sooner," he scolded, voice trembling with worry. She waved off the concern, though her hands shook. Probably just a chest cold, she managed, but the hacking cough that followed suggested something more serious. Dolores insisted they head to the local clinic immediately. Within the hour, they were in a small examination room. O'Connell, a no-nonsense woman who'd treated ranchers in the region for decades, ran tests and listened to Beatrice's lungs. Finally, she announced that it was pneumonia complicated by stress and possible bronchitis that had gone untreated. "You'll need rest, Mrs. Whitlow," Dr. O'Connell said firmly, scribbling on a prescription pad. Antibiotics, limited exertion. If you don't improve in a week, we'll admit you for more intensive care. Rest was not in Beatrice's vocabulary, but the dire look on Garrett's face seemed to sway her. The next few days were a blur. Ava stepped in to handle the paperwork for the final marriage contract signing. Clint managed the day-to-day chores at Spruce Bend. Dolores took over Shady Creek's scheduling, and Beatrice relegated to bed rest, glowered from pillows, occasionally coughing so deeply that Garrett's chest tightened in empathy. At her bedside, he saw a vulnerability that softened his own emotional barriers. More than ever, he realized this woman was no mere land baron. She had stories, regrets, ambitions just like he did. As she drifted to sleep one afternoon, he quietly picked up her journal on the nightstand and read only a few lines. He saw references to her late husband, to the heartbreak of losing him, and a note about making a home for Garrett. Heat rose in his cheeks. Carefully, he returned the journal, heart thudding at the glimpse into her feelings. This was no casual transaction. If they both made it out of this uncertain time, it might just be something real. The pneumonia scare postponed their official contract signing by a week, but ironically, it brought Garrett and Beatrice even closer. He spent hours at Shady Creek ensuring the ranch ran smoothly in her absence, then sat at her bedside in the evenings to update her on herd movements, feed purchases, and potential new hires. Ava helped coordinate with lawyers to push back the date of finalizing the marriage license. Neighbors hearing that Beatrice was ill dropped by with casseroles and well wishes, their curiosity about the upcoming merger tinged with genuine concern for her health. When Beatrice finally emerged dressed in a soft robe and leaning on a carved wooden cane for balance, the entire household sighed in relief. Dolores fussed over her to take it easy. Clint looked away, embarrassed by his own tears of joy. Beatrice offered a thin smile. "I may be old," she said, "but I'm not out of the fight yet." Garrett stepped forward, arms wide, uncertain if she'd welcome a hug in front of everyone. She surprised him by walking right into his embrace. Even a few weeks ago, they would have hesitated to show such tenderness in public, but the near loss had jolted them both into acknowledging that life was too short for half measures. The hush in the room was followed by quiet, approving murmurs. 2 days later, on a bright, chilly morning, the long-awaited signing took place in Shady Creek's study. A local judge arrived along with each party's lawyer. Ava and Dolores served as witnesses, standing beside the large desk. Outside, the world carried on horses, needing feed, fences, needing mending. But inside, time felt suspended. Through the windows, Garrett glimpsed a rolling pasture, thinking of his father and how proud Andrew Doyle would have been to see Spruce Bend saved. Beatrice slid the first document toward him, her voice steady but soft. "We'll sign this property agreement first, then the marriage certificate. Is that acceptable, Garrett?" He swallowed, nodding. "Yes, let's do it." Their eyes locked for a moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. With slow deliberation, they penned their names, Beatrice Adelaide Whitlow and Garrett Liam Doyle, forging a partnership that had begun with pure necessity, but had grown into something far more personal. When the judge declared them legally wed, a hush fell, punctured only by the quiet sniffles of Dolores. Ava gave a watery smile, stepping forward to hug her father. Then Garrett realized he was trembling slightly, the enormity of it all settling into his bones. Spruce Bend and Shady Creek were officially united, along with two hearts that had found companionship across a divide of age and life experience. In the following days, a news bulletin circulated around the county announcing Shady Creek's Beatrice Whitlow and Spruce Bend's Garrett Doyle wed. Ranches merge under new agreement. Many speculated about the arrangement's nature, but the tone was less scandalous and more intrigued. A few rivals muttered about potential monopolies, but the general sentiment was positive, especially given how both ranches had extended new job offers and maintained fair dealings. Beatrice needed another week of partial rest, so Garrett turned a corner of Shady Creek's spacious office into a makeshift clinic for her, a comfortable armchair, a small desk, and enough paperwork to keep her from riding out and overexerting herself. He found her there one afternoon, flipping through old archives. She looked up, a mischievous spark in her eye. "Did you know your great-grandfather sold horses to my father back in 1922? Garrett shook his head. "No, but that's exactly the kind of synergy we can build on. We're not the first to see Spruce Bend and Shady Creek as allies." She reached for his hand. "This union is more than a financial strategy, Garrett. It's something our ancestors toyed with but never realized. Maybe it was just waiting for the right people to come along and make it truly work." The following month was a whirlwind of unifying operations. Garrett split his time between Spruce Bend, ensuring his old crew felt secure in the changes, in Shady Creek, where he learned the finer points of large-scale ranch management from Beatrice's meticulously kept records. Every morning they met to review the day's tasks, then parted ways, each tackling separate responsibilities. Despite the practical nature of their union, small gestures revealed a growing bond, like how Beatrice insisted on packing him a homemade lunch, or how he would comb through the calf registry in the evenings so she didn't strain her eyes. One crisp afternoon, while the two of them were riding across a patch of land previously underutilized at Spruce Bend, they encountered Ava overseeing a new vaccination protocol. Alongside her stood Wyatt Dawson, Marshall Dawson's son, who had approached them a week earlier asking to intern now that Shady Creek possessed the resources for a robust training program. The sight of a Dawson working happily with a Doyle and a Whitlow testament to shifting alliances. Marshall's stance on the new ranch union was still hostile, but his son clearly held different views. Wyatt's a natural with the cattle, Ava told her father. He's been reading up on advanced breeding techniques, too. You should see the notes he's taken. Beatrice exchanged a meaningful glance with Garrett. That's precisely why we started this bigger operation to mentor the next generation. They lingered to watch Wyatt carefully administer a vaccine, answering Ava's questions with quiet confidence. For a moment, Garrett forgot the tension with Marshall, focusing instead on the optimism woven through Shady Creek and Spruce Bend's fresh identity. Later that week, an unexpected crisis tested their unity. Storm clouds rolled in fast from the mountains, and a sudden cold snap turned rain into a sleet-driven blizzard. High up in the summer pasture, a herd of about 200 pregnant cows needed to be moved to a lower valley or risk losing them to freezing mud and ice. Garrett planned to coordinate the effort with Clint and Ava, but Beatrice insisted on accompanying them despite her recent pneumonia. She rode out in the swirling gray afternoon, face pale but determined, the storm raged wind slicing across their path. Garrett caught sight of her astride a sturdy bay mare cloak snapping behind her. He cursed under his breath, worrying about the strain on her lungs, but she seemed unstoppable. They split the group, each flanking different edges of the herd. Through swirling flakes, he glimpsed Beatrice, deftly guiding nervous cattle, her voice carrying over the howling wind as she sang an old range ballad to keep the animals calm. At the treacherous descent, her mare slipped and a gasp rose from the riders nearby. Garrett spurred his horse forward. His heart pounded when he saw Beatrice sag in the saddle, coughing violently. In an instant, he was beside her, coaxing her onto his own horse, as Clint grabbed the reins of her mare. Wrapped in his arms, she trembled from cold and exhaustion. He glanced at Ava, who nodded fiercely. She and the others could finish moving the herd. He turned and galloped to Shady Creek, each jarring step a reminder that no ranch was worth Beatrice's health. She collapsed into a fitful doze by the time they reached the main house. Dolores flew into action, calling Dr. O'Connell, who arrived amid the raging storm with her medical kit. Garrett paced the living room, nerves frayed, ignoring the ice melting from his slicker into puddles on the hardwood floor. When the doctor emerged from Beatrice's room, her face was drawn. She's stable, but this was a close call. If that cough lingers, she may need hospitalization. You have to keep her warm and resting. His throat felt tight. I don't know if I can force her to rest. She's unstoppable. The doctor's gaze was firm. Find a way, Garrett. She won't see another winter if she keeps pushing like this. Long after the storm subsided, whispers of its impact echoed across the county roads. Washed out fences snapped and a few ranchers lost livestock. At Shady Creek, a subdued hush settled in. Beatrice was ordered to bed for the second time in a month, and this time she obeyed partly out of genuine exhaustion, partly due to the combined insistence of Dr. O'Connell and Garrett. Ava stayed close, dividing her hours between advanced veterinary coursework and caring for Beatrice. Even Wyatt showed up daily, offering to manage the stable chores so Dolores could focus on the house. The crisis ironically became the final glue that cemented the Shady Creek-Spruce Bend partnership into something that transcended mere financial convenience. Neighbors, seeing the dedication Garrett showed in protecting Beatrice, softened their skepticism. Marshall Dawson grudgingly acknowledged that if Garrett Doyle was willing to risk life and limb in a blizzard to save a 71-year-old Baroness, perhaps this union was rooted in more than monetary gain. He and Garrett even had a terse handshake at the feed store a week later. By the time May arrived, the days stretched longer, and wildflowers dotted the once snow-laden fields. Beatrice's health improved under a regimen of mild exercise, constant hydration, and a daily vow from Garrett that he would handle any heavy ranch work until she was cleared by Dr. O'Connell. One tranquil afternoon, she emerged onto the front porch of the Shady Creek main house. Garrett joined her, guiding her into a rocking chair with gentle insistence. "You spoil me," she chided, but the smile she wore betrayed her gratitude. "I'll keep spoiling you as long as you let me," he replied, sitting in the adjacent chair. They sipped iced tea and watched a group of interns down by the corral, led by Ava and Wyatt, practicing safe horse handling techniques. Across the yard, Clint and Dolores chatted while loading tools onto a pickup, preparing to repair some outer fencing. The sense of community was palpable, as though Shady Creek and Spruce Bend had birthed a fresh spirit of collaboration that fed everyone's hopes. Beatrice set her glass down, reaching for Garrett's hand. "You realize we've managed something that folks around here thought impossible, merging two historically significant ranches, bridging generational differences, and maybe giving people around here a bit of inspiration that tradition can evolve." He turned his palm to meet hers, curling his roughened fingers around her slender ones. "And to think it all started as a bank notice and your rather brazen proposal." A soft laugh escaped him. "You haven't regretted it, have you?" She tilted her head, silver hair catching the sunlight. "Not for a second. I worried you might resent me for roping you into a life that might invite scrutiny. But each day shows me that we've built more than a convenient arrangement." He brought her hand up, pressing it gently to his heart. "I won't lie, I had my doubts in the beginning. The age gap, the gossip, the fear that I'd never fill the shoes of Richard Whitlow. But I learned we can write our own story, and Beatrice, there's nobody I'd rather stand beside come hell or high water." They rocked in silence for a moment, the gentle creak of the porch and the hum of distant voices in the yard providing a comforting soundtrack. Then, as if conjuring the future, Ava and Wyatt approached, broad smiles on their faces. "We've got news," Ava announced. "It's official, the new ranch internship program is funded. We can bring in more students next season, including kids from out of state who want real ranch experience." Wyatt nodded enthusiastically. "And we're finalizing a scholarship in your names. It'll help cover education for young ranchers lacking financial means." Beatrice squeezed Garrett's hand. "That's exactly what I hoped for, making ranching sustainable for the next generation." She glanced at Garrett. "Think your father would be proud." Garrett's eyes misted. He'd be over the moon. And so would your Richard, for that matter. Ava and Wyatt left them to share the news with Dolores and Clint while the couple sat soaking in the golden afternoon. The sweet, clean smell of alfalfa drifted on the breeze, and somewhere in a far pasture a horse neighed. Each sound reminded Garrett of the fragile, beautiful tapestry they had woven, threads of resilience, tradition, and love. "We have a new horizon every morning," Beatrice whispered, leaning her head gently against his shoulder. "Every sunrise out here is a promise, a chance to see life begin again." Garrett pressed his cheek to her hair. "You once told me the land chooses its own stewards. Maybe we're just answering that call." Together, he inhaled the crisp air, feeling the steady beat of his heart matched by hers. Then, with a warmth that belied the months of strife they'd endured, he murmured, "My darling, it already is." From my own perspective, there's something uniquely inspiring about Garrett and Beatrice's journey. What started as a last-ditch business arrangement turned into a bond that transcends age, past heartbreak, and local gossip. Their decision to unite two struggling ranches proved that by sharing resources and hearts, we can weather even the fiercest storms. Their story reminds me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is trust someone else's strength when our own begins to falter. The Wyoming plains where they live aren't forgiving, but love and perseverance can flourish even in the toughest conditions. Seeing Beatrice mentor the next generation, while Garrett adapts to a whole new phase of life, gives me hope for all of us facing seemingly impossible obstacles. So what do you think? Did any part of Garrett and Beatrice's story resonate with you? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe for more tales of resilience, community, and unexpected second chances.